Imagine a battlefield blanketed in snow and silence, where the echoes of war still linger. In the dense forests of Bastogne, a strange and chilling presence roams. Soldiers on both sides of the conflict reported sightings of a massive, black shadow, an otherworldly creature, known only as the Black Dog of Bastogne. What was it? A ghostly apparition, a supernatural force, or something far darker than we can imagine? Stay with us as we uncover the mystery of this eerie figure, whose presence still haunts the memories of those who fought in the Battle of the Bulge. You won't want to miss what happens next. Somme. The Battle of the Somme is forever etched in history as one of the most brutal and devastating battles of World War I. Fought between the British and French forces on one side and the German Empire on the other, the battle lasted from July 1st to November 18th, 1916. More than 1 million soldiers were wounded or killed during this harrowing conflict, making it one of the bloodiest military engagements in history. The scene at the Somme was one of unimaginable horror. The land, once filled with fields and life, was transformed into a muddy, desolate wasteland. The relentless bombardments had turned the earth into a jagged mass of craters and trenches, where soldiers lived and fought in appalling conditions. The very air was thick with the acrid smell of gunpowder and decay, as shells rained down on both sides, bringing destruction and death. For those who survived, the battlefield was a place where time seemed to lose its meaning. Days bled into nights, and nights stretched into an endless void of waiting and terror. The fog of war, both literal and metaphorical, clouded their vision as they fought not only against the enemy, but also the crushing weight of fear, exhaustion, and the constant threat of death. In these grim and suffocating surroundings, something strange began to emerge, a phenomenon that would go on to haunt the memories of those who witnessed it. As night fell over the battlefield, with the mist rising from the trenches and enveloping everything in a blanket of eerie silence, something caught the eye of a few soldiers. They began to notice a faint, unexplainable glow in the distance, an otherworldly light that shimmered through the darkness, like a beacon. At first, many dismissed it as the result of some natural phenomenon, perhaps the reflection of artillery flashes in the fog or the glow of distant fires. But as the sightings continued, soldiers began to wonder if there was something more to the light than mere chance. Was it a trick of the mind, or was there something else at play on the blood-soaked soil of the Somme? This light, seen by both British and German soldiers alike, became a subject of fascination and speculation. Some believed it was a symbol of hope, a guiding light for the lost souls trapped in the chaos of war. Others thought it might be a sign, a message from beyond, urging the living to continue the fight in honor of those who had already fallen. But the mystery surrounding the light only deepened as more reports came in, each telling a different version of the strange phenomenon. What was this light, and why did it appear at such a time, over such a hallowed and cursed place? As we delve deeper into the story of the mysterious light over the Somme, we'll explore the various theories that emerged in the wake of its sightings, from the spiritual to the scientific. Was it really the spirits of the fallen soldiers trying to reach out to the living? Or was it a natural occurrence, like an atmospheric anomaly, that simply happened to appear at the right place and time? The truth may never be fully known, but the stories of those who witnessed the light continue to resonate, adding another layer to the already mythic history of the Somme. The fog of war. The atmosphere over the battlefield of the Somme was unlike anything most soldiers had ever encountered. The constant bombardments, the unrelenting rain, and the stench of death and decay had turned the land into a living nightmare. Yet, there was something else that plagued the minds of the soldiers: the oppressive fog that hung over the battlefield, thick and suffocating, obscuring both vision and hope. The term fog of war is often used to describe the confusion and uncertainty that soldiers face during battle. But in the case of the Somme, the fog was both a literal and figurative presence. The weather conditions were so harsh that at times, the soldiers could hardly see a few feet in front of them. The fog would roll in from the nearby rivers, creeping across the torn land and wrapping everything in a thick, damp shroud. In this eerie silence, the battlefield seemed suspended between life and death, where nothing felt real, and yet everything felt terrifyingly immediate. As soldiers trudged through the mud, the fog seemed to swallow them whole. The trenches, often filled with water and filth, became maze-like corridors, disorienting the men who struggled to find their way in the dark. It was in these moments of uncertainty that the fog, both in the physical and emotional sense, became a powerful symbol of war. Soldiers couldn't see what lay ahead, and they couldn't hear anything beyond the incessant sounds of artillery fire. The line between the living and the dead blurred, and time itself seemed to distort, as if the fog was not just obscuring their vision, but also their perception of reality. The fog was a constant companion, never lifting for long, always hanging in the air like a heavy, invisible weight. The soldiers grew accustomed to the damp, cold sensation that clung to their skin, but the true weight of the fog was psychological. It became a manifestation of the unknown, a reminder of how little control they had over their fate. In the fog, everything was uncertain, and it was in this chaos that strange occurrences began to be noticed by the men on both sides of the battle. Amidst this disorienting fog, when night descended, the battlefield would transform into a place where only shadows moved. Visibility was so poor that soldiers had to rely on their instincts and sounds to guide them. Yet, there were moments, fleeting but significant, when they could hear the faintest sounds of something else, something beyond the war itself. The stillness of the night, combined with the thick fog, made even the smallest noise seem like an omen. It was in these conditions that the mysterious light, faint and unexplainable, began to appear. And as the soldiers looked into the fog, where nothing else could be seen, they couldn't help but wonder, was this light a beacon leading them out of the madness, or was it something else entirely? The fog served as the perfect backdrop for the unknown, amplifying the feeling of dread and wonder that the soldiers experienced when they encountered the strange light. Was it merely a figment of imagination, born out of the confusion and fear of war? Or was it something more? The soldiers, trapped in their daily fight for survival, didn't know. But the fog, in all its oppressive silence, seemed to hold a secret, one that only the light could reveal. The first sightings. It was on one particularly foggy night in the heart of the Somme when the first reports of the mysterious light emerged. Soldiers, exhausted from days of fighting and the unrelenting hardships of trench warfare, began to notice something unusual in the distance. Amid the chaos and constant bombardment, one man, an infantryman from the British side, swore he saw a faint glow rising from the wreckage. At first, he thought it might have been the reflection of a distant artillery shell or perhaps a burning pile of debris. But this light, unlike any he had ever seen, didn't flicker or die out. It remained steady and unwavering. The light, he noted, appeared not from the heavens above, but rather from the very ground itself, as if it emanated from the earth beneath the blood-stained soil of the battlefield. It was soft at first, almost imperceptible in the dense fog, but it soon grew brighter and more distinct. He wasn't the only one to see it. Other soldiers from different regiments, and even from the opposing German forces, began reporting similar sightings. Some described the glow as a small lantern-like light, while others claimed it resembled a searchlight sweeping over the battlefield. The men on both sides, conditioned to dismiss the unknown in such a brutal and unforgiving environment, initially wrote it off as a trick of the mind, perhaps caused by exhaustion or the disorienting effects of war. But as the reports increased, it became impossible to ignore. Over several nights, the light appeared again and again, sometimes in the same spot, sometimes elsewhere, but always in the same eerie, steady fashion. Rumors began to circulate among the soldiers. Some said it was a signal from their commanders, a beacon to guide them through the fog of war. Others speculated that it was a supernatural occurrence, a light from the spirits of the fallen soldiers who, in death, were still haunting the battlefield. The mystery of the light soon became a source of both fascination and dread. In the midst of the devastation, where every shadow seemed to hold a new threat, the appearance of this strange light stirred emotions that the men hadn't expected. Some soldiers began to look to the light for guidance, hoping that it would lead them out of the carnage and chaos. Others felt a sense of dread, as if the light were a warning, a sign that something ominous was at play. And then, there were those who remained skeptical, chalking the sightings up to the fatigue and madness brought on by the horrors of war. After all, the mind has a tendency to play tricks on those who are starved, sleep-deprived, and constantly under fire. But despite the skepticism, the mysterious light continued to shine on, and its presence seemed to grow more undeniable with each passing night. For those who believed, the light represented something more than just a strange anomaly. It was a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments of war, there might still be a guiding force, whether it was the spirits of the fallen soldiers, the will of the gods, or some unknown force that had decided to intervene. To them, the light was a symbol of something beyond the physical, something eternal, trying to reach out through the veil of death and destruction. Yet, as with all things born from the fog of war, the light remained elusive, its true nature unknowable. For every soldier who claimed to have seen it, there were others who questioned its existence, dismissing it as mere illusion. The mystery only deepened, leaving the men to wonder whether the light was something to be feared or something to be followed. The nature of the light, as the sightings of the mysterious light continued, the nature of this strange phenomenon became the subject of intense debate among the soldiers. At first, there was little more than speculation. Some believed it was a signal of hope, a guiding beacon for the lost souls trapped in the hell of the battlefield. Others dismissed it as a trick of the mind, a product of exhaustion and fear, the kind of hallucination one might expect from a soldier who had been fighting for days with little rest and sustenance. However, as the light appeared consistently under the same conditions, its true nature remained a mystery. What struck many of the soldiers most was that the light didn't behave like any normal light they had ever encountered. It didn't flicker like the flames of a campfire or the distant flashes of artillery fire, nor did it behave like the bright, destructive bursts of exploding shells. Instead, the light had an eerie, steady quality, almost as if it was alive, pulsing with a quiet, rhythmic intensity. Some soldiers, particularly those who had witnessed it over several nights, described it as a kind of soft, golden glow, casting shadows that seemed unnatural in the dense fog. It wasn't a light that lit up the surroundings, but rather a faint, ethereal glow that seemed to hover in the distance, almost unreachable. The light's movement, or lack of it, was equally baffling. It would sometimes remain in one spot for hours, defying the usual forces of wind or movement that should have scattered such a light. Other times, it would appear and disappear with no discernible pattern, as if playing with the soldiers' expectations. Some thought it was a searchlight, perhaps from a distant observation tower or a signaling device from the high command. But this explanation didn't satisfy everyone. The glow never seemed to come from a fixed position. It was as if it was part of the earth itself, rising from the very ground they fought on. For those who believed the light had supernatural origins, the lack of a clear explanation only served to strengthen their conviction. Could it be that the light was the spirit of a fallen soldier, wandering the battlefield in search of the living? Or perhaps it was a gathering of souls, risen from the carnage to watch over their comrades and guide them to safety? In the minds of some, the light was a sign from the dead, those who had fought and died on this blood-soaked soil, whose spirits had become part of the very land they once defended. Others, however, rejected the idea of supernatural forces at play and turned to more rational explanations. Could the light be a natural phenomenon? Some soldiers posited that it might be a reflection of moonlight on the fog, distorted by the dense air. Others suggested it could be phosphorescence, a chemical reaction caused by decaying organic matter, or perhaps the glow of distant fires. While these explanations seemed plausible, they did little to quell the growing fascination with the light. Why did it appear only during certain nights, under specific weather conditions? Why did it always seem to be so steady, unwavering, and strangely beautiful. No matter the explanation, the mysterious light had become more than just an anomaly. It had become a symbol. For the soldiers who saw it, it represented something beyond the mundane horrors of war. It was a symbol of the unknown, of mystery, of the unseen forces that shaped their world. Whether it was the light of the dead trying to reach out, a natural occurrence, or a figment of their imagination, it didn't matter. The light had captured their imaginations and given them something to hold on to, a reason to keep fighting, even in the darkest hours of the war. Despite all the theories and speculation, one thing was clear. The light was not just a simple phenomenon. It was something far more profound, something that stirred the hearts and minds of those who saw it, challenging their understanding of the world and their place in it. In the midst of the hellish nightmare of war, the light stood as a strange, unexplainable presence, offering a glimpse of something beyond the destruction and death that surrounded them. Theories behind the light. As the sightings of the mysterious light over the Somme continued, various theories began to emerge about its origin. These theories range from the purely scientific to the deeply spiritual, reflecting the desperate need of the soldiers to make sense of the unexplainable. Some of these theories offered plausible explanations, while others ventured into the realm of the supernatural, giving rise to ideas that would be passed down as part of wartime folklore. One of the first theories to emerge was that the light was simply a natural phenomenon, a trick of the mind caused by the harsh conditions of war. Some soldiers suggested that the light was a reflection of distant artillery flashes or the glow of burning debris from exploded shells. Given the constant bombardment and the chaotic nature of battle, it seemed possible that the light could be a reflection of distant fires or explosions, distorted by the fog and mist that hung over the battlefield. In this view, the light was nothing more than a trick of perception, an illusion born from the disorienting effects of the battlefield environment. Others were less convinced by such explanations. They felt that the light was too consistent, too deliberate, to be simply an optical illusion. The soldiers who had witnessed it over multiple nights swore that the glow remained steady and unchanging, sometimes even appearing in different parts of the battlefield. The soldiers who saw the light described it as almost sentient, as if it were intentionally guiding them through the night. This sense of purpose led some to theorize that the light could be something beyond the physical world. A popular theory that emerged among the soldiers was that the light was a supernatural manifestation, perhaps the spirits of the fallen soldiers who were still wandering the battlefield. These soldiers had fought and died in such horrific conditions, and their spirits, it was believed, could not rest. The light, they thought, was a sign from the dead, a beacon for those who were still trapped in the hell of war. Some soldiers even spoke of feeling comforted by the light, as if it were a guiding force, leading them through the darkness and offering a moment of peace in the chaos of battle. For others, the light was seen as a symbol of hope, something more than a mere physical phenomenon. In the midst of endless death and destruction, the light represented something otherworldly, a glimmer of something beyond the carnage. Perhaps it was a sign that the fallen soldiers, even in death, were watching over the living. To many soldiers, this was a comforting thought, something that reminded them they were not alone, that there was something watching over them, even the most desperate of circumstances. The spiritual theories surrounding the light were bolstered by the strange consistency of its appearances. The fact that it seemed to appear on particular nights, often during times of low visibility and mist, gave the light a sense of ritual, as if it were operating under its own mysterious rules. Some soldiers even began to believe that the light had a purpose, to guide them, to offer protection, or perhaps to mark the spot where fallen comrades had died. Some spoke of the light as a divine presence, others as the spirits of warriors who had fallen in battle but refused to move on. On the opposite end of the spectrum were the more skeptical soldiers, who dismissed the supernatural explanations as a product of the soldiers' fatigued and terrified minds. They pointed to the scientific possibilities, suggesting that the light was caused by gases rising from the battlefield, a result of the decaying bodies of the dead, or perhaps even the chemical reaction of certain minerals in the earth. Phosphorescence, the emission of light from chemical reactions in decaying matter, was one such explanation. In this view, the light was simply a natural but rare occurrence that had been amplified by the psychological stress of war. Despite these scientific explanations, many of the soldiers continued to believe that the light was something more. The consistency of the sightings, the fact that it seemed to offer comfort rather than just confusion, led many to believe it was something beyond the physical world. Whether it was a symbol of the spirits of fallen soldiers, a divine intervention, or just a natural anomaly, the light remained a profound mystery. For the soldiers who had witnessed it, the light became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments of war, there might still be something to guide them through. The spiritual interpretation. For many soldiers, especially those who had endured the horrors of the Battle of the Somme, the mysterious light could not be explained away by scientific theories or natural phenomena. As the light continued to appear, unwavering and serene amidst the chaos of war, a spiritual interpretation began to take hold among some of the men. The battlefield, drenched in blood and fear, became a place where the living and the dead seemed to exist in parallel, and the light became a bridge between these two worlds. For those who believed, the light was not merely a physical anomaly or a trick of the eye. It was something far more profound, a manifestation of the spirits of the fallen soldiers. The idea of ghosts or spirits haunting the battlefield was not a new one. Throughout history, soldiers have often reported seeing strange, unearthly phenomena on the battlefield. But in the case of the Somme, the light seemed to carry a deeper meaning, a sense of purpose. To the men who believed, it was clear that the light was not random. It was a guiding force, trying to lead them through the madness and suffering of war. The connection between the light and the spirits of the fallen soldiers was reinforced by the conditions of the battlefield itself. The Somme was a place of tremendous loss, where thousands of men from both sides were killed in a single day, their bodies often left to decay in the trenches or scattered across the battlefield. The sheer scale of the death and destruction created a sense of spiritual unrest, as if the souls of the departed could not find peace. The light, in this interpretation, was seen as a beacon for those souls, an attempt to guide them through the fog of war and into the afterlife. For some soldiers, the sight of the light brought comfort, a sense that they were not alone, even in the darkest moments of battle. In the midst of the unimaginable carnage, the light represented something beyond the human world, something that transcended the brutality of war. It was as if the light was a reminder that, even in death, the soldiers who had fought and fallen at the Somme were still present, still watching over their comrades. In this belief, the light became a source of solace, a guiding presence that offered hope in the face of despair. Others, however, saw the light as a symbol of unfinished business. They believed that the fallen soldiers were not merely watching over them, but were trapped in some form of purgatory, unable to move on until the war was over. The light, in this interpretation, was a call to the living to finish what the dead could not. It was as if the spirits of the fallen soldiers were still bound to the battlefield, still fighting a war that had already claimed them. The light was not just a comforting presence. It was a sign of their unrest, a plea for the living to take up their cause and ensure that their sacrifice was not in vain. This spiritual interpretation gave rise to many different stories among the soldiers. Some claimed to have heard whispers in the fog, as if the spirits of the dead were trying to communicate with them. Others spoke of feeling an unexplainable pull toward the light, as if it was calling them to follow. There were even reports of soldiers who, after seeing the light, claimed to have felt a sense of peace, as if they had been touched by something divine. Whether it was the spirits of the fallen soldiers, or perhaps a more universal force, the light had an undeniable effect on those who saw it. In the chaos of the Somme, where soldiers lived in constant fear of death, the light became a symbol of something greater than themselves. For those who believed, it was a manifestation of the eternal struggle between life and death, a sign that even in the midst of destruction, there might still be a path forward, a way to find peace in the aftermath of war. Whether they saw it as the light of the dead, a divine presence, or a sign from the universe, the soldiers who witnessed it were forever changed by its appearance. Witness accounts. As the mysterious light over the Somme continued to appear, soldiers from both the British and German forces began to share their experiences, offering personal accounts of a strange phenomenon that had taken hold of their imaginations. These stories, filled with awe, fear, and disbelief, became the fabric of a growing mythos surrounding the light. Each soldier's experience was unique, but all shared a common thread, a sense that the light was not simply a trick of the mind, but something far more profound. One British soldier, Private Thomas Andrews, described how he first saw the light during a particularly brutal night on the front lines. "I was crouched in the trench, my ears ringing from the artillery blasts, and the fog was so thick I could barely see my own hands in front of me," he recalled. And then, in the distance, there was this soft, golden light. It wasn't like any fire or flare I've seen. It was steady, almost like a lantern, but it didn't flicker. It stayed there, calm and constant. I don't know why, but I felt like it was calling to me. Private Andrews went on to explain how, despite the fear and confusion of war, the sight of the light brought him a strange sense of peace. For a moment, I forgot about the bombs, the noise, the endless waiting. I felt like I wasn't alone. Other soldiers described similar experiences, though their reactions to the light varied. Some were hesitant to speak of what they had seen, fearing ridicule or being branded as superstitious. But as the sightings increased, more soldiers found themselves compelled to share their accounts. German soldiers, many of whom had fought in the same region, reported seeing the light as well. One German officer, Captain Friedrich Bauer, described his encounter with the light in stark contrast to the horrors of the battlefield. "It was a night like any other, full of explosions and gunfire," he recalled. "But then I saw it, just as the others had. It was soft, almost like a firefly, but far too steady to be one. It was so bright, and yet it didn't blind me. It was almost as if it was trying to guide me somewhere." Bauer's account was particularly striking, as he mentioned feeling an inexplicable urge to walk toward the light, as if it were leading him through the darkness. "I don't know why I did it," he said, "but for a moment, I felt like I should follow it. It wasn't fear that drove me. It was something else, something I can't explain." Captain Bauer confessed that he, like many others, wondered whether the light was the manifestation of something supernatural. "After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I didn't want to believe in ghosts or spirits, but what I saw that night, it didn't feel like a natural light. It was something more." Perhaps the most compelling accounts came from soldiers who felt they had been guided by the light during their darkest hours. Several men reported that the light seemed to appear at moments of extreme peril, guiding them to safety or, in some cases, showing them a path through the chaos of battle. One British soldier, Private Albert Graves, recounted how the light seemed to appear just before he was about to step into an artillery barrage. "I was about to climb out of the trench when I saw it," he said, "a soft glow in the distance. I hesitated for a moment, and that's when the shelling started. If I had stepped out when I planned to, I'd be dead. But the light, it made me stop, made me think. It saved my life." The testimonies of these men were varied, but consistent in one key aspect. The light had an undeniable effect on them. Whether it was a fleeting moment of comfort, a guiding force through the fog of war, or a sense of peace amidst the devastation, the light became something much more than a mere curiosity. It became a symbol of survival, a fleeting moment of hope in the face of overwhelming despair. For some, the light was a reminder of the lost comrades who had fought and died beside them. "It was like they were still with us," said Private Andrews, who lost several friends in the conflict. The light felt like a message from them, saying that they were all right, that they hadn't truly left. For others, it was a sign of the resilience of the human spirit, an indication that even in the darkest of times, there was still something to believe in. Despite the many witnesses who spoke of the light, skepticism remained. Some soldiers dismissed the accounts as mere superstition, the product of fear and fatigue. Others claimed that the light was simply a natural phenomenon that had been misinterpreted. Yet, for those who had seen it, the light represented something far more powerful, an experience that transcended logic and reason, a moment where the boundaries between life and death seemed to blur. The role of the light in war lore. As the mysterious light continued to appear over the battlefield of the Somme, it quickly became woven into the fabric of war lore, with soldiers and civilians alike sharing stories of its strange presence. The light, seen by so many, was no longer just a fleeting phenomenon. It was a symbol, one that transcended the chaos and carnage of war and became a part of the mythology surrounding the Battle of the Somme. It was as if the light had become a living entity, its legend growing with each passing day, influencing the soldiers who saw it and shaping the stories they would tell for years to come. In the immediate aftermath of the battle, soldiers who had witnessed the light began to share their stories with one another. These stories would often be told around campfires or in the quiet moments between battles, as a way to bond and process the trauma of war. For many, the light became a kind of spiritual touchstone, a memory that provided a sense of connection to something greater than the violence they had endured. It became a tale of hope, something that reminded them that, even in the darkest moments, there might be a guiding force at work, one that offered peace or protection. The light's role in war lore expanded as the years went by. After the war, veterans who had fought at the Somme returned home to their families, and the stories of the mysterious light began to take on a life of their own. They spoke of the light as though it were a living entity, as though it had been a presence on the battlefield that transcended the world of the living. Some veterans began to believe that the light was not just a coincidence, but a divine sign, something sent by higher powers to guide the souls of the fallen soldiers and protect those still fighting. The light became more than just a memory of a single battle. It became a symbol of the collective spirit of those who had fought and died at the Somme. In the years following the war, the light found its way into the broader mythos of World War I. Stories of the light were shared by veterans in books, letters, and gatherings, and these accounts began to shape the way the Battle of the Somme was remembered. The light became part of the collective consciousness of a generation that had lived through unimaginable horrors. It was woven into the tapestry of war stories, standing alongside other famous legends of World War I. The Christmas truce, the angelic presence at the front lines, and the spirits of the soldiers who had fought with such courage and despair. The light also became a symbol of the lasting impact of war. The men who fought at the Somme and who saw the light were forever changed by the experience. The light came to represent the hope that was so desperately needed in a time of suffering and loss. It symbolized the idea that, even in the aftermath of destruction, there could still be a flicker of light to guide the way. Whether it was a spiritual presence, a divine intervention, or simply a comforting illusion, the light became a source of solace for those who had witnessed the horrors of war. As the years turned into decades, the story of the mysterious light continued to be passed down. It became a tale shared between generations, a reminder of the bravery and sacrifice of those who fought at the Somme. The light was no longer just a strange occurrence on the battlefield. It had become part of the lore of war, a symbol of hope, survival, and the eternal connection between the living and the dead. The legacy of the light also spread beyond the soldiers who had seen it. Over time, it entered the realm of folklore, and even historians began to take an interest in the phenomenon. Some tried to debunk the idea of a supernatural light, offering scientific explanations for the sightings. Others, however, embraced the idea that the light was something far more profound, something that spoke to the enduring spirit of those who fought and the haunting memories that remained long after the guns fell silent. The role of the light in war lore had solidified its place in history. It was not just a tale of the Somme, but a story that embodied the experience of war itself. The light became a metaphor for the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to find hope and meaning even in the most hopeless of circumstances. It was a testament to the bravery of the soldiers who fought and died, and to the lasting impact of their sacrifices. The scientific perspective. Despite the growing belief in the supernatural nature of the mysterious light, the skepticism surrounding it could not be ignored. For many soldiers and later, historians and scientists, the idea that the light was simply a trick of the mind or a natural phenomenon became an attractive explanation. The fog and the disorienting nature of trench warfare had caused more than one instance of hallucinations and misperceptions, and the reports of the light were no different. Scientists, who were interested in offering rational explanations, were quick to propose theories that dismissed the light as anything supernatural. One of the first scientific theories put forward was that the light was simply a reflection of artillery fire or burning debris. As the battle raged on, the air was thick with smoke, and it was not uncommon for explosions or the distant glow of fires to cast eerie lights in the fog. This theory suggested that the light could have been caused by the glow of fires burning far off in the distance, perhaps from artillery explosions or burning structures. With the fog in place, these lights could have been distorted, giving the appearance of something more supernatural. Another scientific explanation considered the natural atmospheric conditions that could have played a role in the sightings. Phosphorescence, a phenomenon where certain materials emit light after absorbing radiation, was one possible culprit. The battlefield at the Somme was littered with decaying bodies and organic material, and this type of chemical reaction could produce a faint, glowing light. Phosphorescence could have been caused by decaying vegetation or even the wet, mucky soil itself, with the interaction of various chemicals in the ground leading to this rare but plausible natural occurrence. Moreover, some scientists argued that the glow could have been caused by the gas released from the extensive use of chemical warfare during the battle. Mustard gas, chlorine, and phosgene gas were often deployed in this region, and the eerie glow of gases under certain weather conditions could have created an effect that resembled a steady, glowing light. If the light was caused by such gases, it would have been a naturally occurring, though frightening, consequence of the intense chemical warfare at the Somme. The fog and the constant bombardment would only have added to the strange appearance of the light, distorting it in ways that made it appear more supernatural. Skeptics also suggested that the light could have been a simple mirage or optical illusion, caused by the interplay of the fog, the weather conditions, and the soldiers' mental states. The stress and fatigue of constant fighting, along with the emotional toll of battle, could have contributed to hallucinations. The soldiers were exhausted, sleep-deprived, and often under extreme duress, all of which are known to cause altered perceptions of reality. Some researchers have posited that the light may have been a figment of the imagination, the result of soldiers' minds trying to cope with the horrors around them. This kind of psychological phenomenon is not uncommon in high-stress environments like war zones, where the mind can begin to create comforting illusions in order to survive the trauma. Despite the explanations offered by scientists, however, the witnesses of the light remained unconvinced. For many of them, the light was a personal experience that defied logical explanation. Even those who initially considered the possibility that the light was a trick of the eye or a result of the fog were often left questioning their assumptions after witnessing it multiple times. The steadiness of the light, its consistency across different locations and conditions, and the sense of peace it brought to many of the soldiers made it difficult for them to accept any mundane explanation. The debate between the scientific and spiritual explanations for the light became an ongoing one. But one thing remained clear. The light had become a powerful part of the Somme's history. Whether it was a natural phenomenon, a supernatural manifestation, or a psychological illusion, the light remained a symbol of the war itself. Mysterious, disorienting, and impossible to fully understand. Legacy of the Somme's light. As the years turned into decades, the mystery of the light over the Somme continued to captivate the imagination of both those who had witnessed it and those who heard the stories in the years that followed. The light, which had first appeared on the battlefield during one of the bloodiest and most brutal conflicts of World War I, was not just a fleeting memory of war. It became an enduring symbol of the human experience in battle. It represented more than just the horrors of the Somme. It came to symbolize the resilience, the hope, and the unbroken spirit of those who fought, bled, and died on that fateful ground. The soldiers who had lived through the battle returned to their homes after the war, carrying the weight of their experiences with them. For many of them, the light had become a cherished memory, something that they turned to for comfort in the dark days that followed the war. It served as a reminder that, even in the face of unimaginable suffering, there was still the possibility of something greater, something beyond the brutal reality of life on the battlefield. For some, the light became a kind of spiritual presence, a guiding force that offered hope in times of personal despair. As veterans shared their stories of the light with their families, friends, and fellow soldiers, the legend of the Somme's light grew. It was passed down through generations, becoming part of the collective memory of the war. In the years after the battle, many former soldiers wrote about their experiences, incorporating the light into their narratives. Some spoke of it as a comforting presence, a beacon that helped them find their way through the chaos of war. Others saw it as a symbol of the souls of the fallen soldiers, trapped on the battlefield and unable to rest until the war was over. Whatever the interpretation, the light became a part of the larger mythos of World War I, helping to shape the way the war was remembered in popular culture. In time, the story of the light over the Somme reached beyond the veterans who had lived through it. It entered the realm of folklore and became a part of the broader history of the war. The light was spoken of not just as a personal experience, but as a symbol of the war itself, its brutality, its sacrifice, and its lingering effects on those who survived it. Even in the years after the war, when the world had moved on to new conflicts and challenges, the light remained a powerful symbol of the human spirit's ability to endure and find hope in the most hopeless of circumstances. For historians and scholars, the light became an intriguing subject of study. Some sought to uncover the truth behind the phenomenon, looking for natural explanations for what the soldiers had seen. Others embraced the light's mystical qualities, suggesting that it might be an enduring symbol of the war's emotional and spiritual toll. Whatever the interpretation, the light remained a central part of the narrative of the Somme, helping to define the memory of the battle for generations to come. Today, the legacy of the Somme's light lives on. It has become a symbol of the unbreakable connection between the living and the dead, a reminder that the spirits of those who fought and died on the battlefield are never truly gone. For the families of the fallen, the light serves as a beacon of remembrance, a sign that their loved ones are still with them, watching over them from beyond the grave. And for those who have studied the war, the light stands as a testament to the enduring mystery of the Somme, a reminder that even in the most brutal moments of history, there are stories that transcend time, continuing to shape our understanding of the past. The mystery of the light remains unsolved, but its legacy endures, a quiet reminder of the sacrifices made during the Battle of the Somme, and the ways in which the war continues to resonate long after the fighting has ended. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey through history. The Black Dog of Bastogne is a reminder that even in the harshest moments of war, the line between the living and the supernatural can sometimes blur. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another eerie tale. We'll be back soon with more mysteries that time has yet to fully unravel. Until then, keep your eyes open, because the shadows of war may never truly disappear.